The 1958 Chevrolet Impala sold so well that dealers could not keep it on their lots. 12 months later, Chevrolet scrapped every body panel, every piece of chrome, and every styling cue, and sent a completely different car to showrooms. A rival designer at Chrysler had made the entire General Motors lineup look a full generation behind the times. And the man waiting to take over GM design wanted cars that looked beautiful with no chrome on them at all. Between the two of them, the 1958 Impala never had a chance at a second year. The car that replaced it looked so different that parking the two side by side made the 1958 look like it belonged in a museum. Here is why Chevrolet killed the 1958 Impala after just 1 year. To understand why Chevrolet killed the 1958 Impala, you have to understand the cars that came before it. The 1955, 1956, and 1957 Chevrolets are among the most celebrated automobiles in American history. Collectors call them the Tri-Fives, and they earned that reverence honestly. The 1955 model introduced the small block V8, a compact and powerful engine so well designed that versions of it would remain in production for decades. It was light, it was powerful, and it fit under hoods that had never been designed for anything bigger than a straight six. That engine changed what a low-priced car could do. Suddenly, the family sedan your father bought to commute to work could outrun half the sports cars on the road. The 1956 refined the formula with cleaner styling, better handling, and an available dual 4-barrel carburetor setup that hot rodders noticed immediately. And the 1957, with its tail fins and aggressive chrome and that unforgettable front end, became a cultural icon before it even left the showroom floor. Hot rodders loved it. Teenagers dreamed about it. Drive-in parking lots across the country were full of them on Friday nights. Chevrolet was winning the low-price sales war against Ford and Plymouth, and winning comfortably. But winning created a problem that nobody at General Motors could afford to ignore. By 1957, the rest of Detroit had caught up. Chrysler, under the direction of stylist Virgil Exner, had launched what the automotive press called the forward look. The 1957 Plymouth and Dodge were longer, lower, and more dramatically styled than anything Chrysler Corporation had built before. They looked like they belonged in the next decade. Ford was pushing hard, too, with clean proportions and a growing confidence that made the 1957 Ford a serious alternative to Chevrolet for the first time in years. General Motors looked at the competitive landscape and arrived at a decision that would reshape every car in the company's lineup. The current designs, popular as they were, could not simply be facelifted for 1958. They had to be replaced entirely. All of them, every division, in a single model year. The man behind that decision was Harley Earl. As vice president of design at General Motors, Earl was arguably the most influential automotive stylist who ever lived. He had invented the concept car with the 1938 Buick Y-Job, a rolling sculpture that introduced the idea of showing the public a dream car that hinted at what was coming next. He had pioneered the use of full-scale clay models in the design process, replacing the wooden bucks that other manufacturers still used. He had introduced tail fins to the American automobile after seeing the twin booms of the Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter plane during a visit to an air base, and that single styling decision had defined the visual language of an entire automotive era. Earl had been setting the direction of GM's design since the late 1920s, and his authority within the corporation was enormous. When Harley Earl said a car should look a certain way, it looked that way. Nobody in the building argued with him. Nobody argued with him twice, at any rate, and the ones who tried once generally found new employment before the quarter was out. And in the mid-1950s, his directive for every GM car was 3 words long: longer, lower, wider. Every division would grow its cars in every dimension for 1958. The Chevrolet would stretch beyond anything the nameplate had ever carried. The Buick would gain inches in every direction. The Cadillac would become a chrome-laden land yacht that consumed an entire lane of highway. Earl believed that size communicated value, that a bigger car on a dealer lot signaled progress and prosperity to the buyer standing in front of it with his checkbook in hand. In post-war America, where the economy was booming and gasoline was cheap, that logic was almost impossible to argue with. But Earl was also approaching the end of his long career. He would retire in late 1958 after more than 3 decades at General Motors, and the man waiting to replace him had a very different idea of what an American car should look like. The Impala did not start as its own car. When Chevrolet began planning the 1958 model year lineup, the Impala was conceived as a premium sub-series of the Bel Air, which had been Chevrolet's established mid-range line since the early 1950s. The thinking was straightforward. Take the top-of-the-line Bel Air and add enough visual distinction, enough flash and exclusivity to justify a higher sticker price. Special trim, unique taillights, a different roofline on the Sport Coupe that set it apart even at a distance. The name itself came from an African antelope known for its speed and grace, and Chevrolet's marketing department liked the associations. It sounded fast and elegant without being pretentious. It did not sound like a number or a word pulled from a dictionary. It sounded like something you wanted to own. What set the 1958 Impala apart from the lesser Chevrolets on the showroom floor was primarily its rear-end treatment. Where the standard Bel Air had a relatively simple tail, the Impala received 6 taillights, 3 on each side, set into a sculpted rear panel that looked like nothing else in the entire Chevrolet range. Chrome script on the rear quarter panel spelled out the Impala name in a flowing italic that marked it unmistakably as something above the ordinary. The interior received upgraded upholstery in patterns and materials that a Biscayne buyer could only admire through the showroom glass. Underneath all of that distinction, the car shared its platform and drivetrains with every other full-size Chevrolet. The same small block and big block V8 options were available. The same frame, the same suspensions, the same transmissions. The difference between an Impala and a Biscayne was almost entirely cosmetic, and that was precisely the point. Chevrolet had learned from watching its own corporate siblings, Buick and Oldsmobile, that American buyers would gladly pay more for a car that looked more expensive, even when the mechanicals underneath were functionally identical. The Impala was Chevrolet's answer to the question of how to sell a more profitable car to an aspiring buyer without engineering an entirely new automobile from the ground up. The 1958 Chevrolet was the biggest car the division had ever built up to that point. It was longer than the 1957 by several inches, wider across the body, and noticeably heavier on the road. The styling followed Harley Earl's longer, lower, wider mandate to the letter, and in some ways, it over-delivered on that promise. Up front, the car wore quad headlights, a design element that swept through the entire American auto industry in 1958, as state laws finally permitted 4 headlight configurations on passenger cars. The grille was massive, a chrome-heavy affair spanning the full width of the nose that gave the front end a presence the leaner, lighter 1957 had never attempted. From the side, the car was long and slab-sided, its proportions closer to a Buick Roadmaster than to the nimble Tri-5s that had come before it. The car was not universally loved. After 3 years of the relatively trim and athletic Tri-5s, the sudden jump in size and weight struck some buyers and most of the automotive press as excess for the sake of excess. The chrome was heavier than it needed to be. The proportions were wider than the road required. The weight gain showed in cornering and in braking. Road testers noted the added weight in every corner and in every stop from speed. But the sales numbers told a different story entirely. The Impala found buyers immediately. The Sport Coupe, with its pillarless hardtop roof and clean side profile, was especially popular with younger buyers and with anyone who wanted something that turned heads in a parking lot. Buyers who wanted the prestige of a Buick or an Oldsmobile but preferred to pay Chevrolet prices had found their car. The Impala gave them something to point to in the driveway that their neighbors could not mistake for an ordinary Bel Air. But the problem was never the showroom. The problem was what was happening behind closed doors inside the GM Technical Center in Warren, Michigan, where the next generation of Chevrolets was already taking shape on the clay modeling platforms, and what was happening across town at Chrysler, where Virgil Exner had proven that dramatic, forward-looking styling could move metal by the hundreds of thousands. Virgil Exner's forward look had landed on General Motors like a punch to the jaw that nobody in the executive suite saw coming. The 1957 Chrysler products were visually stunning in a way that caught the entire industry off guard. The Plymouth Fury, the Dodge Custom Royal, the DeSoto Fireflight, the Chrysler 300C. These cars were long and dramatically low with soaring tail fins and a clean, almost European-influenced side profile that made everything else parked on an American road look heavy and overdone and a full generation behind the times. Walk into a Chrysler Plymouth dealership in the fall of 1956 and the cars on the floor looked like they had been shipped back from 1962. They were not perfect cars, and that mattered. Chrysler Corporation had rushed the engineering side of the program to get those beautiful new bodies to market on schedule, and the 1957 models quickly developed a brutal and well-deserved reputation for premature rust, leaking windshields, and questionable assembly quality across the board, problems that would haunt the company and destroy dealer goodwill for years afterward. But none of that showed on the showroom floor on delivery day. Standing side by side with a brand new 1958 Chevrolet, a Chrysler product looked like the future of the American automobile. The Chevrolet, for all its chrome and size and Harley Earl pedigree, looked like it was trying to catch up to a race it had already lost. GM's senior leadership recognized the problem almost immediately. The internal design reviews in late 1957 and early 1958 were, by several accounts from people who sat in those rooms, deeply uncomfortable meetings. The 1958 GM cars were selling perfectly well by any reasonable standard, but they did not look like they were leading the American auto industry. They looked like they were reacting to it, chasing trends that Chrysler had set instead of establishing their own. For a corporation that had spent 3 consecutive decades as the undisputed visual pacesetter of automotive design worldwide, that was an intolerable position to occupy for even a single model year. Something fundamental had to change, and it had to change faster than the normal product development cycle would normally allow. The answer would come from the man who was about to inherit Harley Earl's corner office and reshape everything General Motors put on the American road. Bill Mitchell was not Harley Earl, and he had no interest in becoming a copy. Where Earl favored chrome and bulk and ornamentation, layering decorative detail upon detail until the surface of a car became a glittering landscape of reflections, Mitchell leaned toward cleaner lines, sculptural surfaces, and a kind of restrained aggression that owed more to European grand touring cars than to American roadside excess. Mitchell had already made his reputation inside GM with show cars and concept vehicles that pointed toward a fundamentally different aesthetic, one that valued the shape of the body itself rather than what was bolted onto it after the clay was finished. His philosophy was that a truly well-designed car should look beautiful with no chrome on it at all, that the form should carry the entire statement. That was a radical idea in 1958, when chrome was the common currency of the American automobile, and more chrome was always assumed to be better than less. The transition from Earl to Mitchell was not simply a change in personnel at the top of the design staff. It was a philosophical revolution inside General Motors that would play out across every division over the coming decade, changing the look of every car from the cheapest Chevrolet to the most expensive Cadillac. And the 1959 Chevrolet would be the first full-production automobile to show the American public what Bill Mitchell's General Motors intended to look like. Mitchell and his design team had been developing the 1959 body while the 1958 was still being prepared for production. The clay models taking shape in the design studio looked nothing like the car that Chevrolet was about to deliver to its dealer network. The roofline was dramatically flatter. The body sides were sculpted with a character crease that ran the full length of the car, and the rear end featured horizontal fins that spread outward from the body like the wings of a bird in flight, replacing the conventional vertical fins that had defined the decade. The taillights were teardrop-shaped, set into the trailing edges of those horizontal fins, creating a rear view that was either strikingly beautiful or thoroughly bizarre depending entirely on where you stood. Some designers inside the studio thought it was the most exciting production car GM had ever committed to build. Others thought it would confuse buyers who had just gotten comfortable with the look of the 1958. Mitchell and his supporters did not concern themselves with comfortable. Comfortable was what Chrysler was counting on them to be. Mitchell wanted to lead, and leading meant doing something nobody expected. Ed Cole made the call to go forward with the complete redesign. Cole had been instrumental in developing the legendary small block V8 that transformed Chevrolet in 1955, and by 1958 he was running the entire Chevrolet division with the confidence of a man who had already proven he could make history. He understood something fundamental about the low-price segment of the American car market. Chevrolet's dominance depended not just on offering good value for the dollar, but on being perceived by the buying public as the most modern, most forward-looking choice at the price. A car that looked like a warmed-over version of last year's model, no matter how well the current version was selling, was a car that had stopped leading. And in the late 1950s, standing still for even one model year meant losing ground to Ford and Plymouth that might take years to recover. Cole backed the complete redesign without reservation. He had seen what happened when a manufacturer hesitated, when Studebaker and Nash and the other independents tried to stretch a body style for one more year because the tooling was already paid for. They fell behind, and they never caught up. Some of them disappeared entirely. Cole was not going to let Chevrolet make that mistake, not on his watch. The engineering team had their own reasons to welcome a fresh start. The 1958 platform was functional but clearly overweight. A ground-up redesign offered the opportunity to revisit the frame, refine the suspension geometry, and shed the excess pounds that both buyers and automotive journalists had identified as the biggest weakness of the 1958 Chevrolet. The new frame would be both stiffer in torsion and meaningfully lighter on the scale, answering every criticism the road testers had leveled at the outgoing car. The argument that ultimately carried the day inside the GM executive suite was clean and simple. Playing it safe with a mild facelift for 1959 would hand the entire styling conversation to Chrysler and Ford, and Chevrolet could not afford to let that happen. The only way to lead was to make a leap so dramatic that the competition would spend the next 2 years reacting to Chevrolet instead of the other way around. And making that leap meant abandoning everything about the 1958 Impala after just 12 months on the market. When the 1959 Chevrolet debuted in dealer showrooms across the country, the reaction from the public and the press was immediate and sharply divided. The car looked like nothing Chevrolet had ever produced before. The horizontal rear fins, which the press quickly and permanently nicknamed the bat wings, the narrow cat-eye taillights, the dramatically flattened roofline, and the deeply sculpted body sides created a silhouette that was unmistakably, almost aggressively new. If you parked a leftover 1958 next to a fresh 1959 on a dealer lot, the two cars did not look like they came from the same manufacturer, let alone from consecutive model years. One looked like it belonged at a 1950s drive-in. The other looked like it was ready to drive onto a launching pad. The Impala name carried over from 1958, but its position in the Chevrolet hierarchy changed significantly. For 1959, Chevrolet promoted the Impala from a sub-series of the Bel Air to its own standalone full series, positioned above the Bel Air at the top of the passenger car lineup. That promotion reflected two things: how strongly the Impala name had connected with buyers during its brief 1958 debut, and how much confidence Chevrolet's management had in the name's potential as a brand within the brand that could anchor the entire full-size lineup for years to come. The gamble paid off handsomely. The 1959 Chevrolet Impala became one of the best-selling automobiles in the entire American market. The combination of dramatic styling, noticeably improved driving dynamics on the lighter and stiffer new platform, and the already proven Impala nameplate was powerful enough to meet the Chrysler challenge directly and win. Chevrolet had responded to the forward look not by imitating it, not by copying the Exner aesthetic, but by creating its own distinct and confident vision of what the modern American car should look and feel like. The one-year-only status of the 1958 Impala body gave the car something that no amount of advertising could ever manufacture: genuine, undeniable scarcity. Every other generation of the full-size Chevrolet lasted at least 2 model years before a major restyle, and most lasted 3 or even 4. The 1958 stands entirely alone. A complete body design that existed for 12 months on the production line and then vanished forever, replaced by something so different that the two cars share almost nothing visible to the eye. For decades after its single year of production, the 1958 lived in the long shadow of its more famous neighbors. The Tri-5s had the nostalgia vote locked down. The 1959 had the drama and the design history significance. The 1958 sat between them, too new to carry the classic early 50s Chevrolet charm and too visually conventional to compete with the space-age car that immediately replaced it. Collectors and enthusiasts largely treated it as a footnote in the Chevrolet story, the transition year, the one that people skipped past on their way to the cars they actually wanted to own. That reputation began to shift as the collector market matured in the 1980s and 1990s, and buyers started looking beyond the obvious trophy cars to find something with a story nobody else was telling. The 1958 Impala's unique position in automotive history as the first year of a nameplate that would become one of the longest-running and best-selling in the entire industry, combined with a body style that appeared exactly once and was never repeated, started to attract serious attention and serious money. The Sport Coupe became the most desirable body style among collectors. A well-restored example today commands respect at any car show in the country, and strong prices at major auctions. Not because the 1958 is the prettiest or the fastest Chevrolet of its decade, but because there is genuinely nothing else quite like it in the entire production history of the brand. The 6 taillights, the chrome script, the specific proportions of that one-year body, none of those design elements appeared on any other Chevrolet before or since. The death of the 1958 Impala was not an isolated decision by one division acting alone. It was part of a larger pattern that defined the entire American auto industry in the late 1950s, a period when the annual model change accelerated to a pace that even the manufacturers themselves struggled to sustain. GM, Ford, and Chrysler were locked in a styling arms race where last year's car was already yesterday's news on the showroom floor, and the only way to remain competitive was to redesign everything, constantly, regardless of whether the current model was still selling well. American buyers traded in their cars every 2 or 3 years, motivated in part by the very real social pressure of pulling into a church parking lot or a country club driveway in something that looked current and successful. Dealers profited enormously from the constant turnover, and the factories ran at capacity producing cars that were designed from the very first sketch on the drawing board to look dated and undesirable within 24 months of their introduction. But the cost was real, and it was mounting. The engineering and tooling resources required to fully redesign a car every single year were enormous. Build quality suffered when ambitious new designs were rushed from the clay model stage to the production line without adequate time for testing and refinement. And the styling itself grew increasingly extreme with each passing year, reaching a peak of excess in 1959 with the Batwing Chevrolet and the towering, rocket-inspired fins of the Cadillac Eldorado, before the entire industry collectively pulled back in the early 1960s toward cleaner, more restrained, more rational shapes. The 1958 Impala was a casualty of that arms race. Chevrolet did not kill it because it failed in the marketplace. They killed it because the unwritten rules of late 1950s Detroit demanded that nothing, no matter how successful, was ever allowed to look the same for long. In the logic of that era, a car that still wore the same body after 2 years was a car whose manufacturer had stopped trying. And Chevrolet, the best-selling nameplate in America, could never afford to look like it had stopped trying. Not for a single model year. Not even when the car it was killing was still selling as fast as the factory could build it. The Impala name outlived the car that introduced it by decades. Chevrolet kept building Impalas through design revolutions and fuel crises and emission regulations and market shifts that buried lesser nameplates without leaving a trace. The name appeared on sedans, coupes, convertibles, and even a few cars that bore almost no resemblance to the original. But no other Impala ever shared its body with as few siblings as the original. 1 year, one design, and then a replacement so thoroughly different it made the first car look like a relic from another age entirely. Every full-size Chevrolet that came after owed something to the lesson that single model year taught the company. The American buyer will forgive you for changing too much, but never for changing too little. If you made it to the end, hit subscribe. I will see you in the next one.